Welcome to Corporate Chaos Scandals, the place where you hear the most shocking, messy, and unbelievable confession stories. From office drama to secrets people were never supposed to share. Nothing is off limits. Get ready, because these stories only get crazier. Let's dive in. He built a billion-dollar empire with the woman he loved. Then he hired the woman who wanted to burn it all down. And the worst part? He almost let her. Before we get into this one, because this one is something else. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now and give this video a like. We do these stories every single week right here on Corporate Chaos Scandals. And trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming. Now, sit down. Turn your phone over. Because this story, this is the one people do not talk about enough. The quiet war that happens inside a marriage when someone from the outside decides she wants what belongs to someone else. This is Gino and Sophia's story. And it starts, as all dangerous things do, beautifully. 32 years ago, Gino Marchetti and Sophia Reyes sat in a one-bedroom flat above a laundrette in East London, sharing a single laptop and a dream that most people would have called delusional. Gino was 24, charming, sharp-jawed, the kind of man who could walk into a room and immediately become the most interesting person in it. He had a gift for people, for vision, for making others believe. Sophia was 23, quieter, deadly brilliant. The kind of woman who could solve in 10 minutes what a team of consultants couldn't crack in 10 days. She had 3 data science certifications before most people knew what data science was. Gino always said Sophia didn't think about the future. She calculated it. They had nothing, and they had each other, which, as it turned out, was everything. They founded Marchetti Data Solutions from that flat. Sophia built the algorithms. Gino built the relationships. Within 5 years, they had their first major contract, a European logistics company that needed to cut overhead by 30%. Sophia's model cut it by 41%. Within 10 years, they had offices in London, Frankfurt, Dubai, and Singapore. Within 20, they were a billion-dollar company with over 4,000 employees worldwide. Gino became the face, the TED Talks, the Forbes covers, the conference keynotes. He was magnetic, the kind of CEO that journalists called visionary and employees called the one who makes you believe in the company. Sophia became the brain. The board trusted her. The analysts respected her. She didn't need applause. She needed results. And every year, she delivered them. By the time this story begins, Gino and Sophia Marchetti were 56 and 55 years old, respectively. Married for 30 years. Worth, conservatively, £900 million. They had 2 grown children, a townhouse in Kensington, a villa in Tuscany, and a marriage that, from the outside, looked like the kind that only exists in films. From the inside, it was more complicated than that. It was a Tuesday in October when Isabella Cruz walked through the doors of Marchetti Data Solutions for the first time. She was 26, freshly graduated from LSE, London School of Economics, with a first-class degree in business and communications. She'd done 2 previous internships at mid-tier firms and had been told by every supervisor she'd ever had that she was exceptional. The kind of exceptional that was hard to define, but impossible to ignore. She was also, and this story does not shy away from this, extraordinarily beautiful. Not in an obvious way, in the way that made people do a double take and then pretend they hadn't. She was assigned as Gino's executive secretary. Now, to be clear, this was not unusual. Gino had had executive assistants and secretaries for 15 years, mostly experienced professionals in their 30s and 40s who could manage his schedule, filter his calls, prepare his briefings, and keep the engine of his daily life running smoothly. Isabella was younger than most, but her references were impeccable, and the head of HR had flagged her as a standout candidate. What was also not unusual, at first, was that Gino took an interest in mentoring her. He was known for this. Genuinely. He had a reputation in the company for spotting talent and investing in it. He'd built entire department heads from junior hires. He believed in people. And so within the first 2 weeks, he was inviting Isabella to shadow boardroom meetings, explaining the logic behind key decisions, recommending books, asking about her career goals, telling her she had what it took. Gino didn't see anything wrong with this. Sophia, who sat 3 floors up and was deep in a data migration strategy for their Singapore office, didn't know it was happening. And Isabella? Isabella noticed everything. She noticed how his face changed when he was passionate about something, how he gestured with his hands, how he remembered the small things. She'd mentioned once, offhand, that she liked oat milk in her coffee, and the next morning there was a carton in the break room fridge with a post-it note on it that said, "For Isabella." It was nothing. It was everything. It was Gino just being Gino. But Isabella filed it away, and she started to build a plan. Here's the thing about long marriages. The dangerous ones aren't the marriages full of screaming and plates thrown across kitchens. Those marriages at least have heat. There's passion in the wreckage, something alive in the noise. The dangerous marriages are the quiet ones, the ones where 2 people have simply, without meaning to, without any single moment of failure, grown into parallel lines, close together, moving in the same direction. But never quite touching, Gino and Sophia loved each other. That is not in question. This is not a story about a couple that had fallen out of love. This is a story about 2 people who had fallen into something more insidious. Routine. Assumption. The quiet certainty that the other person would always be there. And therefore, not urgently, not cruelly, just practically, placing each other lower and lower on the list of priorities. Gino had his conferences and his keynotes. Sophia had her models and her strategy sessions. They had dinners 3, maybe 4 times a week, where they talked about the company, the children, logistics, where to spend Christmas, whether the Kensington house needed new gutters, comfortable things, safe things. The last time Gino had told Sophia she was brilliant, genuinely, spontaneously, the way he used to. He couldn't remember when it was. The last time Sophia had looked at Gino like he was the most interesting man in the room. Not the most important, not the most useful, but the most interesting. She couldn't remember either. They were more married than most people would ever be. And somehow, in the machinery of that marriage, they had stopped seeing each other clearly. This is what Isabella saw. Not through some dramatic revelation, she wasn't privy to their private life. But she watched Gino closely enough. She watched how his energy shifted between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. How he was alive in the boardroom and somehow dimmer when he mentioned going home. She watched the way he spoke about Sophia, always with respect, always with admiration, but never with hunger. And Isabella, who was 26 and ambitious and had decided she wanted more than a secretary title, filed that observation away too. She was building a case, and she was very, very patient. It started with small things, as it always does. A hand that lingered 2 seconds too long when passing a document. a laugh that was pitched slightly lower than necessary, an email sent at 11:30 at night, work-related, technically, always technically, that ended with, "I don't know what this company would do without you. I mean that." Not sent to the CEO. Sent to Gino personally, his private work address. 3 months in, Isabella asked if she could speak with him privately about her career trajectory. Gino said of course. They met after hours, the office mostly empty, the city lights bleeding through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Gino sat across from her at the small meeting table in his office rather than behind his desk, because that was the kind of man he was. He wanted people to feel like equals. Isabella told him she admired him, that she had never worked for anyone who had made her feel this seen, this mentored, this understood. She said it quietly, carefully, eyes on his. Gino nodded, said he was glad, said she was one of the brightest people he'd brought into his orbit in years. He meant it as a professional compliment. Isabella heard something else, or decided to. She reached across the table and put her hand over his. Gino pulled his hand back, slowly, deliberately. He sat back in his chair and looked at her for a long moment. "Isabella," he said, "I think we should be very clear about what this is, and what it isn't." She didn't flinch. She held his gaze and said, "I just want you to know I see you, the real you. Not the CIO, not the face of the company, you." Gino stood up. He thanked her for the conversation. He said good night. He left first. He did not sleep well that night. He did not tell Sophia. And that silence, was the first crack she actually caused. Because Isabella had not expected him to crumble immediately. She had expected exactly this: the retreat, the propriety, the good man doing the right thing. She had done her research. She knew who Gino Marchetti was. And she knew that the way to undo a good man was not force. It was patience. It was presence. It was making herself indispensable until the line between professional and personal became impossible to see clearly. She came in the next morning, smiling. Professional. Perfect. As though nothing had happened. Gino told himself he had handled it. He was wrong. Sophia Marchetti did not become a billionaire by missing details. She had spent 30 years reading data, finding the pattern in the noise, identifying the anomaly that everyone else had overlooked. It was not a skill she switched off when she walked out of the boardroom. It was simply how she processed the world. And so, quietly, over the course of 2 weeks, she began to notice things. The way Isabella's name came up, not frequently, just precisely. Isabella reminded me of that call. Isabella flagged the Singapore report early. Small mentions, each innocent, that cumulatively formed a pattern. And Sophia Marchetti did not like unexplained patterns. She looked her up on the company system, read her file, reviewed her performance reviews, all glowing. She pulled up Gino's calendar and noted how many after-hours entries were flagged as one-on-one meetings. Only 3. All labeled mentoring session. All reasonable. And yet, Sophia did something she had never done in 30 years of marriage. She went to Gino's floor unannounced at 6:15 in the evening and stood at the glass wall of his office. He was alone, at his desk, working. She felt something release in her chest, relief, and then immediately after, the hot embarrassment of having felt it. She was Sophia Marchetti. She didn't spy on her husband. But what she saw next, she could not explain away. Isabella looked up, saw Sophia standing in the corridor, and rather than the normal, slightly flustered reaction of a junior employee unexpectedly clocking the co-founder. She smiled, slowly, like a woman who had been expecting exactly this moment and had prepared for it. "Mrs. Marchetti," she said, warmly, standing up, extending a hand. "What a lovely surprise. Can I get you anything? I'll let Gino know you're here." She said it like she owned the floor. Sophia shook her hand, looked at her for exactly 5 seconds, said, "Thank you, Isabella. I know my way," and walked into her husband's office. That night at dinner, Sophia said, "Tell me about Isabella." Gino said, "She's extraordinary, sharp. She's going to run something one day." Sophia said, "I'm sure she is." And she said nothing else. But her mind was moving at full speed. The company's annual global summit was held every November at a 5-star hotel in Mayfair. 400 people, executives, partners, investors, international colleagues, black tie, open bar, the kind of event that reminded everyone why they'd fought so hard to get to the table. Isabella was there in her capacity as Gino's executive assistant. She was there to manage his schedule, shepherd the logistics, handle the moving parts. That was her role. She arrived in a black dress that was entirely appropriate and entirely devastating. Gino saw her across the room and looked away. Sophia, standing beside him, in a midnight blue gown that she wore the way she wore everything, with effortless authority, followed his gaze without appearing to. She saw nothing conclusive. Because there was nothing conclusive to see. Yet. But across the course of the evening, Isabella was present, always at the right distance, always needed, filling his glass before he'd noticed it was low, appearing at his elbow with the name of a contact he was trying to recall. Small things. Precise things. Things that said, without words, "I know you better than you realize." At one point, near midnight, Gino stepped onto the hotel terrace for air. The city glittered below. He was loosening his collar, exhaling, the relief of a man who'd been performing all evening. Isabella appeared beside him 2 minutes later. "Long night," she said. "Long career," he said, and laughed. She stood close. Not too close, just close enough. And she said, "You know, the way they all look at you in there, the way they hang on every word. That's not the company they're responding to, Gino. That's you, just you." She had stopped calling him Mr. Marchetti 3 weeks ago. He hadn't corrected it. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for one moment, one honest, human, terrible moment, he felt it. Not love, not even attraction exactly. Something older and simpler. The feeling of being seen, of being wanted, not as a CEO, not as a husband or a father or a brand. Just wanted. He stepped back from the railing. "You should get back inside," he said. "Early start tomorrow." She looked at him for a beat longer than necessary. Then she nodded, smiled, and left. He stood alone on the terrace for another 10 minutes. And when Sophia appeared at the terrace door and saw his expression, not guilty, but unsettled, she made a decision. It was time to stop watching. It was time to move. Sophia Marchetti was not a woman who acted on emotion. That was Gino's department. She acted on evidence, on strategy, on the cold, clean logic of someone who understood that the best moves were the ones your opponent never saw coming. She scheduled a meeting with the head of human resources on a Wednesday morning, on the pretext of reviewing the intern pipeline, something she did twice yearly anyway. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. In that meeting, she casually reviewed Isabella's file again, out loud this time, with the HR director present. She noted the after-hours schedule, the number of one-on-ones with the CEO, the rapid acceleration of her access to sensitive meetings. "She's clearly talented," Sophia said. "I'd like to see that talent properly developed. I think it's time we moved her into a more structured placement. Something with the Singapore team, perhaps. Real scope, real challenge, good for her career trajectory." The HR director, who was not a fool and who had worked for Sophia long enough to know that her casual suggestions were rarely casual, said, "Of course, I'll begin the transition." Sophia also did one other thing. She told Gino. Not about the transfer. She hadn't mentioned that yet. She told him she'd been thinking, that they hadn't really talked in a long time. Not about the company. Not about logistics. About them. She asked him if he'd join her for a weekend away. Just the two of them. Tuscany. No laptops, no calls. Gino said yes, immediately, without hesitation. And she saw something in his face when he said it. Relief. Real, genuine relief. As though he'd been waiting for someone to give him permission to come home. They went to Tuscany. And whatever had been fraying between them, quietly, invisibly for years, they began, with the patience of people who had built something from nothing, to repair. It didn't fix everything. That's not how 30 years works. But it reminded them of something they'd both forgotten, that they had chosen each other. Every day, for 3 decades. And that choice, unlike stock prices and market projections, was not something that required data to validate. It was simply true. Isabella discovered the Singapore transfer on a Thursday. She found the internal memo on her own desk. Placed there, Sophia had ensured, by hand. Not sent digitally. A printed document in a manila envelope with her name on it in HR's handwriting. Old-fashioned. Deliberate. She read it twice. Then she walked directly to Gino's office. She didn't knock. "Is this yours?" she said, placing the memo on his desk. Her voice was controlled. Barely. Gino looked at it. He had, in fact, been told about it that morning by Sophia, who had framed it as a career development opportunity. He'd agreed. He hadn't connected it to anything else. Until now. "Isabella, did you request this transfer?" "It came from HR. Sophia was involved in—" "Your wife." She said it flatly. "Your wife arranged this. She oversees the intern development pipeline. It's within her remit." "Gino." She stopped. She looked at him, and then she did something he hadn't expected. She dropped the performance, all of it. The warm eyes, the careful proximity, the calculated helpfulness. What was left underneath was sharp and clear and almost, he had to admit, impressive. "I know what I was doing," she said quietly. "And I think on some level, you know too. And the fact that you're sitting there, pretending this is about career development, tells me everything I need to know." Gino stood up. "Then let me be very clear," he said. His voice was even. The warmth was still there. It never left him. But beneath it was steel. "I have never, in 30 years, been unfaithful to my wife. Not once. And I will not be unfaithful to her now. Not for a feeling. Not for flattery. Not for you." Silence. "The Singapore role is a genuine opportunity," he continued. "It will accelerate your career by 5 years. I would encourage you to take it seriously. And I would encourage you to think very carefully about the kind of professional reputation you want to build. Because you are brilliant, Isabella. That part was never theatre. Don't waste it on this." She held his gaze for a long moment. And then, And this was the part that nobody expected. She nodded. Once, picked up her envelope, and walked out. She accepted the transfer 3 days later. The thing about a war that ends before anyone fires a shot is that the casualties are still real. They're just quieter. Word travels in a company, not the full story, never the full story, but the texture of it, the vibe. People noticed that Isabella was gone. People noticed that Gino seemed steadier somehow, more present. People noticed that Sophia came to the executive floor more often, not to spy, but because she wanted to. 3 weeks after the Singapore transfer, Isabella sent Gino a single email. Short, professional. She thanked him for the mentorship. She said she understood now what he'd been trying to show her about integrity, about what it actually cost. She said the Singapore team was extraordinary and she was already learning. He wrote back one line, "I never doubted you'd be exceptional. Take care of yourself." He showed the email to Sophia. She read it, handed the phone back, said, "She'll be fine." And that was it. No drama, no ultimatum, no trial. Because Sophia Marchetti had not fought for her marriage the way people expect, with fire and accusation and tears. She had fought for it the way she built companies, with strategy, with patience, and with the quiet certainty that she was the best thing in the room. There was one conversation they had, and it is worth sitting with. Gino asked Sophia one night if she'd known all along how bad it had gotten, how close it had come. Sophia looked at him for a moment. Then she said, "I knew it hadn't gotten anywhere. Because I know you. I have known you for 32 years. You are, genuinely, the most principled man I've ever met. And sometimes I forget to tell you that." Gino was quiet for a while. Then he said, "And sometimes I forget to make sure you don't have to guess how much I love you." They sat there for a while. No conclusions, no bows neatly tied. Just two people who had built something extraordinary, an empire, a family, a life, remembering that they had built it together. Isabella Cruz spent 18 months in Singapore. She turned the regional analytics division around. She was promoted twice. She left Marchetti Data Solutions 2 years later to co-found her own data consultancy, which has already secured Series A funding and is expanding across Southeast Asia. She never publicly discussed her time at MDS. She never needed to. Gino and Sophia celebrated their 33rd anniversary in Tuscany. Their daughter posted a photo of them on Instagram, laughing, sun-soaked, completely unposed. And it got 40,000 likes from people who said they wanted a love like that. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know from a photograph, was that love like that is not found. It is built, brick by brick, choice by choice, crisis by quiet crisis. It is not the love of a first glance or a first summer. It is the love of 33 winters, of disagreements and reconciliations and dinners where nothing important was said and dinners where everything was, of two people who looked at each other in a laundrette flat with a shared laptop and a delusional dream and decided, you, every time, you. That is the love nobody talks about, because it doesn't look dramatic on the outside. But it is the only love that lasts. That is the story of Gino and Sophia Marchetti, the billion-dollar marriage, the beautiful intern, and the woman who tried to take what wasn't hers and learned something unexpected along the way. If this story hit different, and I have a feeling it did, drop a comment down below. Tell me what you think about what Gino did. Was he naive? Was he wrong to mentor her at all? Was Sophia the real MVP of this entire situation? Because I think we know the answer. And if you're new here, welcome to Corporate Chaos Scandals. We tell stories like this every single week, the ones that stay with you. Hit that subscribe button right now, and smash that like button if this one got you. It genuinely helps us keep doing this. I'll see you in the next one.